So I'm so excited to have you guys all here for the kickoff of our second year of JumpStart. So JumpStart is a unique collaboration between Launch VT, featuring John Antonucci and Generator. And the idea is we're aiming to support super early stage entrepreneurs and give them the tools they need to succeed. It's sort of a boot camp for business where all you really need is a prototype, a physical prototype of a product that you have in mind, and the ability to dream of it as a successful business. And we'll take you from there. This time around, we actually had, for the cohort, we had 36 applicants. It was a super hard decision by our selection committee. I want to thank our selection committee. That's Lee Boyer of Fresh Tracks Capital. That would be Matt Flago of Matt and Eric Design, and that would be John Antonucci of Launch VT. It was a difficult decision. There are excellent applicants, but I think you'll agree that our cohort that was chosen is really, really exceptional and fascinating. In fact, if our cohort is here, could you guys just stand up for a second? Turn around and wave. From environmental lamps to the world's first magnetic snowboard binding, it's an amazing group, and they're going to be going through 9 weeks of intensive work to focus on learning business basics, and they're going to be simultaneously working on refining their prototypes. So at the end of it, they're ready to start selling on a test basis, and they'll graduate with all the tools they need to apply for advanced support for entrepreneurs such as Launch VT. One thing I want to point out really quickly is we actually, I don't know if a lot of you may not have been to Generator before, or if you have, you think of it as that space out there. This is a brand new space. This is actually a unique collaboration between Champlain College and Generator. We're actually in Champlain College's space right now. We call it the Flex Space because it's a place where we can do lots of different things. Students will, on the other side of this is a big space on the other side of these curtains here, they'll be able to build film sets and make films. They'll be able to do, we're going to have a VR, AR studio in the back for people developing AR, VR games, and we'll be able to do events like this. In fact, we have 5 other lectures as part of this series. Be watching out for those, as well as our Reckless Ideas speaker series and lots of other things like that. So, before I go any further, I'd like to thank our sponsors. First off, People's United Bank. Thank you so much for your support. CETO and the Kauffman Foundation. We actually received a grant from the city, the Mayor's Prize, that was a Kauffman Foundation grant, and that allowed us to expand our cohort from 4 to 8 people, and we're super excited by that. We also want to thank Davidson Hodgkins Accountants and J&H Capital, and also the Community Foundation. So now I'm going to turn it over to John Antonucci to introduce our speaker tonight.
Nice. All right. So I just wanted to preface this by giving a little bit of context in the way that we think about supporting entrepreneurs and the way we think about developing the speaker series. And so it's a really different set of entrepreneurs that JumpStart is working with, and it is a bit risky. So we're talking about prototypes, we're talking about concepts, we're talking about things that are just getting started. And so one of the big things we try to do is say, well, 1, you can do it, but 2, it's going to be messy as hell, and that's okay. We're here for you, and we're going to also wrap around you with a bunch of other people who are going through the same thing. They may have some expertise to share, and we're also going to bring in the amazing experts, advisors, mentors, coaches, basically people who are willing to lend a hand and share what they know to help our entrepreneurs. That's like our greatest quality, and it's the most powerful thing that we can bring. And so it's a true, awesome collaboration to be able to bring in people that are in this room and others to help our entrepreneurs maybe learn a new machine to further their prototype development, or maybe bring in an advisor to help them figure out their cash flow analysis. And by the end of 9 weeks, what emerges is something very inspiring and something much different from where it started. And that's kind of the process that we're going for, and that's kind of the topic of tonight's talk. You may have encountered people who are really doe-eyed and think that they've got the next great idea and that they just need to, go out and make a pitch deck and they'll raise lots of money and the end will be history. So what we've done is we've tried to scale that back and say, like, well, who are you and what's going on in your life, and be realistic about that. Not to scare you away from being an entrepreneur, but to really make a plan and figure out how to do it with your values and the life that you want to live intact. And so I'm so happy and thrilled, and we're so lucky to have Jen Kimmich here with us tonight to share her journey, because it's hard to find someone who's gone through more and who's developed a more successful company. And what I've specifically asked her to talk about is a lot of the not so pretty stuff, not so smooth stuff, things that didn't go great, and how she persevered through that, and how it took a lot of hard work, grit, determination, resilience, and planning and work to build the great company that she has built. So by way of introduction, obviously, she doesn't need much of one, but I do want to make reference to a couple of things that may be lesser known. Jen, besides being an incredible entrepreneur, is an unbelievable community advocate, a mover and shaker. And so she sits on numerous boards throughout the state. She's a huge supporter of many organizations and community efforts in her community, and through her work at Alchemist and then the Alchemists Foundation, does a lot of work to support youth, particularly in central Vermont. And so without further ado, please welcome our guest speaker tonight, Jen Kimmich.
Gosh, thank you so much. I am overwhelmed by how many people are here. Thank you to Generator. Thanks to LaunchVT for having me here tonight. I'm just going to start out by saying I'm getting over a pretty bad cold. So if I cough, please excuse me. I apologize in advance. If I'm not clear or need to speak up, just holler, let me know. The good news is I'm not contagious anymore. The bad news is I didn't get my pre-talk beer. That really helps loose my nerves, makes me feel a little better. I admit it, because I'm not a public speaker naturally, but I do it. I love sharing the story of the Alchemist. And when I was thinking about tonight's theme, I've really talked about the hundreds of times I've told the Alchemist story, John and I have. And we love sharing our story. We love what we do. We love what we've accomplished. We've had a lot of successes. But when I really reflect back on the story that I've told, I feel like I've really only told half of this story. I feel like I have really stressed the successes, and and I've glossed over the tough times. And so my goal for tonight is to be as authentic as possible, as unfiltered, as unscripted, and as real as possible, and really, share how difficult and how stressful it really is to be an entrepreneur and have a business. So I'm going to start out by giving a brief overview of the history of the Alchemist in case you're not familiar with it. I'll do it as quick as possible, and then we'll circle back and talk about the challenges. So the story of the Alchemist really started in 1995. That's the year I met my wonderful husband, John, at the Vermont Pub and Brewery. I had been waiting tables there through college. When I graduated from UVM, I would always go back to save money, to travel, backpack around. Not sure what I was going to do, probably go to graduate school or something. I just didn't know. I liked traveling. But I met John. We fell in love quickly. We fell in love with each other first, but I always say I really fell in love with his beer, and he really fell in love with my work ethic. And I think we really saw value in each other. And so we started dreaming and scheming and planning our life together. We got married in 1997. And we started dreaming about our own pub. That's all we wanted. We didn't want a big production brewery. We just wanted a community space like the Vermont Pub and Brewery, where employees felt like family, where regulars loved to come in and everyone supported one another. That was really the goal. And we wanted to make beer and drink beer. We traveled around. We worked countless jobs for the first 6-7 years of our marriage. We scrubbed toilets, we waited tables, we bartended, we carried bags, we built out breweries for other people. At the same time, we were really working on our business plan, doing as much planning as possible. I was working on the financial plan, operations plans, and John was really working on brew recipes out in the garage. We would host parties and sample beer. And we did this for 6-7 years. We moved all over. Over the course of 7 years, we were able to save a whopping $30,000 working 2 and 3 jobs at a time, which was a lot. If you work a low-paying job, you know how difficult that is. Finally, in 2001, we moved back to Vermont. In 2003, we found the space for our pub in the village of Waterbury. We built it out ourselves. We had saved $30,000. With that money, we were able to secure a $150,000 loan. We maxed out all of our credit cards. We had salvaged equipment. We had all used restaurant equipment. The day we opened, we had $200 in the bank, no health insurance, and 15 employees. The day after we opened, I found out I was pregnant. I immediately cried. John handed me the pregnancy test. I said, what are we going to do? And everything worked out. 10 months later, I was behind the bar with the baby and the Bjorn. We were making a little bit of money, enough to get groceries and pay the rent, and things worked out. So we had a successful pub. We realized right away that we needed to invest in our employees. We realized right away that our community and our employees were the most valuable asset that we had. So, we didn't do any advertising, we didn't pay for marketing, but what we did do is invest in our community and our employees the best that we could. After our son started school, though we never had childcare. I got to backtrack here. We couldn't afford childcare. So those first 5 years, literally, John would go into the brewery in the morning. He'd brew all day. I'd go into work with the baby, trying to do accounting with the baby. That's the most frustrating thing in the world. Then I'd hand off the baby. John would go home. I would work all night. And we did that for 5 years. We didn't really see each other. But we got through early childhood. We didn't have childcare. And then when Charlie was about 8, this was in 2009, I started hounding John to expand. I said, we need to have a production brewery. We're in a flood zone. All of our eggs are in one basket right now. And frankly, we really weren't making much money. I think at the end of our pub days, we were each drawing a salary of about $38,000. And skipping pay for ourselves now and then so that we could make payroll. But we did it. In 2011, we decided to branch out. We got a $350,000 loan to start our new production brewery up the road. We were over our timeline. Our equipment was delayed. We were out of money again. Thankfully, we had a really busy summer at the pub, so all of the money we were making was going into our new production brewery. And the day before our first cans came off the line at that production brewery, we lost the pub in Tropical Storm Irene. The next few months are a whirlwind. It's hard to even remember it all or make sense of it all, but we got through it. We doubled our production within 2 months at our production brewery. For a whole bunch of reasons, we found out we couldn't reopen our pub in downtown Waterbury, mostly because it was a special designated flood zone at this point, so we couldn't rebuild our basement brewery. But we doubled down at our new production brewery. In 2 years, we grew 600%. We eventually got shut down by the state. We had to shut our retail room because the crowds were overwhelming. People were parking on Route 100, crossing the road. This whole heady topper mania thing happened. It was crazy. So we shut down our retail space. We increased our distribution. And then we started planning our newest production brewery, which opened 2.5 years ago in Stowe. And that is an $11 million brewery. And today we have 50 employees. We have 2 production breweries. We have our distribution company and our foundation. We're a certified B Corp, and we have earned a lot of awards and accolades for all of our environmental work, all of our sustainability efforts for clean water and various things. So that's the nice story, right? You work hard, you persevere, turn lemons into lemonade, and everything's going to be fine, right? Well, it really was a lot harder than that. And I always gloss over the first year, but I'm going to get a little personal now. And I'm going to talk about the first year we were open because it was incredibly, incredibly difficult. And I don't have a real big takeaway here, but I think what I want to say is sometimes when you have a business, your business comes first before your personal needs. And this first year, we were struggling to make ends meet. I was pregnant, I was sick, my baby was sideways, we couldn't move it. At the same time, my brother had stage 4 colon cancer. So in the spring of 2004, I was back and forth visiting my brother. Our final visit to him in late spring of 2004, We came back a couple days later. He passed away. We went back down. Now I'm almost 9 months pregnant. And a few weeks after we came back, my water broke 3.5 weeks early, almost a month early. So went into the hospital, had my son. The next morning, we didn't have any family around. My son John, my husband John, got up to go to the brewery, clean it, get ready to be open. A few days later, I was writing bills in my bed after my cesarean with the baby, and within a week, I was back to work with the baby and the Bjorn. And to right now, I don't know how I got through it. You know, I think we were just kind of in survival mode. You know, have you ever been in survival mode before, where you just bury all the pain and you don't deal with your own personal needs and you put something else or someone else or your business ahead of yourselves? And that's what we did. And so, you know, I don't have any takeaways, but I don't know how we could have got through that time and kept our business without putting our head down and doing what we had to do. So over the years, we've had a lot of challenges that I think we predicted might arise. And I think that has helped us a lot of times, just preparing for the worst. Does everyone here know who Elizabeth Holmes is? No? She's the founder and former CEO of Theranos. It was a blood sampling company. Well, she was all over the news a few years ago. Fortune 500, first youngest female billionaire in the world, this and that. She was young. She was 19, 20. Her picture was everywhere, and she had this quote. And a few years ago, I read it, and it nagged at me. I'm like, that's not right. And this is her quote. "The minute you have a backup plan, you've admitted you're not going to succeed." This was like on the cover of Time magazine or something. I said, no, that's not right. Well, she's been indicted for fraud. She has no money, and she's been dragged through the mud. All I can say to that is having a backup plan is essential to every business. You don't have plan A, you have plan A, you have plan B, and you have plan C, because that's your insurance as a business person. And I can't tell you how many times we've had to go to plan B and we've had to go to plan C. But we've usually been able to prepare for it and see it ahead of time. So it's pretty seamless. And most of the time the public isn't aware of that. So I'm going to talk about a couple of times that that's happened. The first time was the flood. You know, we really saw that we had all of our eggs in one basket. We recognized how fragile our business was, especially when we were in the flood zone, and we started building out our new production brewery. That really saved us when the flood came and we lost our pub. There's no doubt about it. The second time that is so significant to me was when we were running our new production brewery in Waterbury in our little retail shop, the one that ended up getting shut down by the state. For about a month or two leading up to the closing of that retail shop, we saw the writing on the wall. You know, it was hard to deny that this wasn't going to work in this space. 200 people were lined up every morning outside the door. People were selling our beer illegally. You know, the neighbor was outside with a shotgun. I mean, it was a nightmare. So we started talking about it. I said to John, you know what, John? What if we have to shut this down? What if this doesn't work? Oh, no, it'll work fine. I said, I just don't know. And we really had a real conversation about it, and it led to another conversation. Then we brought in a couple of employees and talked to them about it. What if we have to shut down this space? What do we do? Well, we expand distribution. We do this. We move this person from this position here. And we had a whole plan in place, and sure enough, when the state came in and they said, look, this is out of control, you've got to shut this retail shop down, it's not working, it's not safe, we did it. We did it within a week, and we had all of our new plans in place, and that really saved us. Excuse me. So the one thing we didn't see coming when all of that was happening was the incredible amount of public scrutiny that we would get after we closed our retail shop. It was absolutely shocking to us, and it was sad. People hated us. People were calling us greedy. People told us it was a big marketing scam. People were online saying, F you, I'm never drinking your beer again, you suck. I mean, everything you can imagine. And we just didn't really understand it, but that was a big eye-opener. And, we had been dealing with public scrutiny for, years before that. If anyone has a business, or if you're even on social media, you go into a shoe store, owner of this store sucks. The shoes are tacky. I mean, I always say you have to have thick skin to have a business. But when I really think about it, we're human and we don't have thick skin, and it sucks. It hurts. It nags you day in and day out. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges that I still have. I hate it, we still deal with it all the time. No matter how much environmental work we do, putting our best foot forward, there are still people that say, we're terrible polluters. There's one guy that actually is now personally tagging me all over the internet with hashtag plastic people. And actually, the last time I was tagged, I read what he wrote, and I found out that my husband and I colluded with the town of Waterbury to run all of the state's ravines dry in our goal of world dominance through beer or something, So, this is real, and we deal with this stuff all the time. I have people call me a misogynist because we have D-bag on the can, and this stuff just hurts. And I don't have much of a tip, but everyone goes through it. And I'm not going to say have thick skin because it's going to hurt. All I can say is surround yourself with people that you trust and you care about and have your back, and make sure that the people you talk to are going to wholeheartedly agree with you that these people are assholes. Because it'll just make you feel better. All right. The last thing I want to touch on is one of the things that I attribute mostly to our success, and also one of the things that just causes a lot of extra work and headaches. And I'm sure you've heard it, don't hire any friends or family. That doesn't work well for us. We hire friends and family, and it's worked really well for us. We are a family, we're a family business. With that comes a lot of family dynamics, but it's fine. At the end of the day, I wouldn't do anything different, but we have hired best friends who no longer talk to each other. I have sat through more employee mediation meetings with tears. I just want to pull my hair out, It's frustrating, but it's worth it. It's just like having a family, right? You love everyone in your family, but everyone's a little different, and there's some real relations that you have to deal with, and it's not easy. So, I'm not going to say don't hire friends and family. Do it, but it's a lot of extra work. It really is. So, in conclusion, I just want to say having a business is really, really hard. It's really stressful. And all the time, John and I still are faced with the question, why do we do this? Why do we do this? And we ask ourselves this all the time. Why don't we just sell our business? Why don't, if it's just about making beer and making money, why don't we sell it and go retire in Costa Rica, or just have fun, or go snowboard 5 days a week like all of our friends are? Like, why don't we do that? And it's not the beer and it's not the money that keeps us going. It's our purpose. And that's what we always turn to. Our purpose is investing in our community and our employees. It's investing in the environment. It's being innovative and just moving our community and our state forward. And that purpose is what keeps us going, and that's what we always turn to when times are really, really tough. I could talk forever. I could give so many more stories. I could talk more about the history of the Alchemist. I think this is a really good time to get into some questions and then see what people are interested in hearing more about. Anyone? Anyone? Yes.
Hold up, I got a mic. Just wait for the mic. I got a question.
So you mentioned when you first started the pub, you had $200 in your name or in the bank account.
Yeah.
Employees. That seems not exactly like having a backup plan, but that is the classic entrepreneur story, right?
Yeah.
Do you mind just walking through like your frame reference, your discussions with your husband, kind of like what you were feeling and then what you were hoping for, in that little stage? Sure.
I think, when we first opened the pub, our backup plan, we started with nothing. The backup plan was to go get a job, if it didn't work out, because we didn't have anything to lose. And, we're not afraid of work. We know we can always go get a second or third job. Finding out we were pregnant definitely threw a wrench in that plan, though, because there's only so many jobs you can work when you're pregnant. We maxed out our credit cards. We'd eaten ramen noodles for 2 months, not the best prenatal meal, but Yeah, I think our backup plan in the very beginning was, this is it. This is our, let's do it. Let's work 24/7 and make it happen. If it doesn't work, then we're back doing what we did before. But as we grew and more people depended on us, and still we have backup plans. We have backup plans for so many things. We're always talking about, well, what if this happens? We're going to do that. The more people depend on you, the more your community depends on you, the more those backup plans become really important. And I can't stress enough the value of credit cards. If you're good with credit cards and you can at least pay your minimum each month on time, use them. I mean, they're a great tool to have. I know there are probably some business people here like, no, don't do it. Don't use your credit cards. They've saved us, you know. And this actually moves me to a little story anecdote I want to tell. This was after the flood. It's foggy, but there are certain things I remember. In the days following the flood, I was at the new production brewery with our now CFO. At the time, she was a bookkeeper, and we're trying to make sense of all of the insurance papers. So we're literally going through insurance stuff, keeping an eye on our new canning line that's running, and then running down to the pub and working the cleanup, the fetid mess that was left there. So it was a crazy week. But we were sitting in the office, and our banker, Justin Bourgeois, came in, and he said, Vita's offering some emergency flood loans. I said, I don't have time to apply for a flood loan application. I can't do that. And he sat in the office and he filled out that application all week. And within a week, we had $100,000. Now, that money was supposed to be for flood cleanup. But we got the check and we hadn't been billed for the flood cleanup yet. So, I started thinking, oh my gosh, we got $100,000. What can we do with $100,000? And I was able to, I feel like I can talk my husband into just about anything. It's terrible, really, but I talked him into, we were going to order some tanks from China and get them shipped as quick as possible, and we will double up production. And in 3.5 weeks, we'll have twice as much beer, and then we'll be able to hire some more employees and pay for the flood cleanup. And we did. We had those tanks within 5 days, paid for them. The new beer came out about 3.5 weeks later, that extra heady topper, and then those bills started piling in, but we had twice as much money coming in right away. And that was a huge risk, but that is one of the main things that really kept us going. Yeah. And that could have been on a credit card. I would have put that on a credit card. Other questions? Yeah? Because I have other things I can talk about. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about people that sort of outside of yourself and John that helped you along the way, like sort of who your mentors were or who you turned to?
Yeah. Before we started the pub or after we started? Okay. Because before we started the pub, there wasn't a lot of help. We had a couple of mentors, Greg Noonan from the Vermont Pub and Brewery, and his business partner, Steve Polowashik. They helped us so much in the early years. They really helped John refine some of his brewing recipes, not making the beer, just, the processes, the recipe formulation. They really helped us with some financial planning. But it took us 7 years to save enough money to start the pub. And I remember along the way, even our parents being like, oh, you still thinking of doing that? You sure you want to do that? Like, people really, if you're an entrepreneur and you have this idea, most people will be skeptical or they'll doubt you. Not many people will say, oh, that's an awesome idea. So it's really hard to find people that will support you. After we opened and we were successful, gosh, all of the investors in the world came out. Long lost cousins, people we had never met. But in those early days, there really wasn't a lot of support. Honestly, the day we opened our pub, our staff, our employees really became our best support. They were really, core to our success. They gave us the support we needed, and they were our most valuable asset, and they still are today. Yeah.
You mentioned that you planned for the flood. Can you talk a little bit more about it? Like, when that happened and when you realized it as a risk, because you initially put your business there in the first place, and so I don't know that much about it, but my understanding is a lot of people did not anticipate that Waterbury would flood.
Yeah, I think, there had been a big flood in the early 20th century, but it was a 100-year flood zone. It's funny how quickly we forget. The flood hit in 2011 in Waterbury, and all the homes that were destroyed are rebuilt. I don't think we talk about the flood like it's really going to hit again. It's kind of like, don't talk about it, But pretty much every town in the state of Vermont, whether it's Brattleboro or Bennington or Barry or Waterbury, is at risk of flood. You just don't know when it's going to come or why. But we did know. What we really knew is that it was possible for us to lose our business, whether it was from a weather-related storm like a flood or just because we couldn't keep paying our bills every month because the bottom line was so thin. We recognized all of our eggs were in one basket, and that didn't feel good after 8 years. Especially with a restaurant, you just don't make a lot of money. They say with restaurants, you're really fortunate if you net 5%. So if you have a small restaurant that's grossing $1 million a year, do the math. It's not a lot of money, So yeah, that was it. And also, I kept having this recurring nightmare of bussing tables when I was 80 because I was still washing dishes on Friday night. I hated it. I didn't want to do it anymore. So I was like, we need a plan. We need to move forward.
Okay. You talk about family and in terms of your company and everything else. What's the kind of culture you cultivate for that company to keep that family together?
That's an interesting question. We do it every day. We have a couple of really valuable employees here, and they could probably share some of their experiences. I think we really function like a family, and this feels really icky to me. I've never said it, but I feel like, and I say this because someone brought it to my attention recently, that a family business really does function like a family, and my role is somewhat of a mother, and it's keeping peace, making sure everyone's happy, everyone's content, everyone's getting along, and if you're not getting along, you're able to do your job. There's just a lot of nurturing. There really is. There's a lot of nurturing. Do you think that's right? Is it? Yeah. Yeah, and we don't have a lot of rules either. And I don't like a lot of rules. We have a really thin handbook. It pretty much boils down to be nice to each other, be kind, and then the benefits, So I struggle with it, but it's a lot of nurturing. It's like family, and it's really recognizing that everyone is different. Everyone brings a different value, a different asset to your business. A lot of times we might have an employee who's in the totally wrong position. You think, oh my gosh, this person's terrible. But they're just in the wrong position. And then you put them in the right position and they just do so great and they turn into different people. That's one of the most rewarding things that we do. We don't give up on people quickly at all. We really, we treat them like family, and we try to find something that works. At the end of the day, they really respect us, and they respect each other, and they have each other's backs, and it's a really great environment to work in. It really is.
Hi, I have a comment and then a quick question. My name is Monica. I'm the founder of Heady Vermont. First of all, a quick comment. I was actually stranded at Sugarbush when Irene hit in 2011. And I drove by the Alchemist and saw the absolute devastation in downtown Waterbury. It was not pretty. And it felt like, not only was it serendipitous that you guys opened your new cannery, but it felt like everybody was drinking Heady Topper to support the victims of Hurricane Irene. Mm-hmm. So that we did. So that was a stroke of good luck for you guys, for sure. My question is, when you start a business, you're wearing all these hats. You're doing the books, balancing the budget, washing the dishes, whatever. What were the things you were most excited to kind of hand off as you expanded? And what would you recommend, like, in terms of focus and getting things off your plate? What were the things that you were most excited to kind of redistribute?
Well, we were really sad to lose the restaurant. And we were really, really sad that we couldn't reopen. I could go into all the reasons why we really couldn't. But I'm really happy I don't have to wash dishes anymore. I really am. I don't hand jobs off quickly or easily. I'm a little bit of a control freak. People are really quick to criticize you and call you a micromanager, but I don't think you're a good manager or a business owner if you don't micromanage, because all the little things really do matter. So Chrissy and Ashley are both here with me tonight, and they have taken over 2 very important jobs that I used to do myself. I haven't done them for a while, but Chrissy takes care of all of our social media emails, she does donations and sponsorships and things like that too, but a bulk of what she does is sorting the huge influx of emails and complaints and concerns. And I did that for several years, and for a couple of years after we opened the first production brewery, all through the Heady Topper Mania thing. And, we have had every question and complaint under the sun, and we sat next to each other for a long time before I passed this off to Chrissy, going through responses, right? I was a little bit of a control freak, but it's taken us a long time, but I don't look at those anymore. I get them if they need to come to me, but it's not a quick handoff. People who think that you can just hire someone and hand things off and it's gonna be done the way you want it to be done, it's not. You need to be there and you need to really sit with that person and work with them. Ashley is our distribution manager. When she first started working for us, she started when she was 17. She was a hostess. She's now head of our distribution and our office manager. But when we first started our production brewery, I did all of the distribution, all of the allocations, and the allocations used to be really tough because everyone wanted more and we had less. So, it was deciding who got what when the deliveries went out. And I did all of that myself for probably 1.5 to 2 years until Ashley came. Maybe a year, I don't even know, it's all a blur. But we sat next to each other, again, in the same office for probably a year. Ashley took it over, but she would always show it to me, the numbers. Now, I don't think I've looked at Ashley's numbers for 3 years. I mean, she is so great. They're both so great at what they do. But it doesn't happen quickly. I'm still learning it with them, and it's a long process. So no matter what you're doing, it takes a long time to pass things off, and you need to micromanage if you want things to be done the way you want them to be done. Yeah.
I'm curious, I can speak loudly. You touched on it a little bit, but in my kind of world, I'm tech-centric, and so I'm always thinking about maybe an exit. And so there's really 2 for tech people, acquisition, IPO.
Yep.
You touched on it a little bit, but I was curious, like there's Child's Point stuff that do sell to a larger venue. Would you ever consider that at the Alchemist, or is it just not the right time now, or is it just not the right time ever?
Yeah.
What makes you make that decision?
That's a really tough question. All I can say is, we've been getting letters for years, since, 2011, when the Heady Topper Mania thing happened. We just got a letter last week from a merger acquisition guy. I say guy because it's usually a guy. And usually we're having a great day, and it's like, no, we rip it in half and it goes in the recycling bin. But that day that the crazy guy is hashtagging plastic people me all over the internet, it's like, Jesus, why are we doing this? But again, that's when we turn to our purpose, and we're like, no, for what? Why would we do that? And we're doing what we love, right? Most days it's what we love. For us, our son is going to be off to college in 4 years. We definitely don't want to work as much as we are now forever. But I also can't envision not having what we do be a part of our lives. We talk about a lot of different semi-exit plans, strategies, probably becoming employee-owned someday when we're ready to, just so that we can get some retirement money and kind of ease off and let our employees take over. We're not there yet. I don't think our employees think we're there yet. That's one thought. But you never know what life is going to hand you. So I don't even, I used to say never, never. I still don't think ever, but you never know. You never know. Life is funny, and doors open and doors shut, and we do our best. I do know that if John and I weren't able to have the impact that we have in our community and with the environment and innovation and all of the 45 families that depend on their employment at the Alchemist, that it would be hard to keep going, but that's what motivates us, and it makes it easy.
You had mentioned, I think, 600% growth during a fairly short period. Was it like a 2-year period?
Yep.
Can you comment on that a little bit, on how scary that might have been, and can you also talk more specifically maybe about scaling? How you managed the scaling to deal with that?
Honestly, that portion of growth between 2011 to 2013 wasn't scary at all, because people were lining up every day to buy our beer, and we were literally running out of beer. If we would open at 11, we would be out by 1 in the afternoon, and we never had beer on the weekend, and people were just hating us because we weren't making enough beer. People were telling us we were, it was all a marketing scam, and we were purposefully not making enough, even after we had increased 600%. People often ask us about the challenges of scaling up, but I'm always quick to say we haven't really scaled up. We make more beer, but we haven't increased the sizes of our batches. We still make small batches of beer. Unlike most breweries that produce as much beer as us, we don't have any automated systems. Everything is done by hand. It's all manual hoses, clamps, because we really like people to be in touch, our brewers to be in touch with the beer. We have invested in people instead of fancy equipment over the years. So we're making small batches, and we're blending a lot of batches for consistency and just making more beer. So, for instance, at our Waterbury production brewery, where we make about 9,000 barrels of beer a year, we could easily have 1 or 2 brewers and make a couple of big batches of beer a week. But we have 4 brewers and a couple of folks that cellar, so we have a staff of 6 in the brewery, and we do 12 brews a week. And we do the same thing in Waterbury. So we haven't had issues with quality scaling up, because we haven't scaled up the size of what we do. We just do it more often. Does that answer your question? Well, yeah. Because, that is a problem. And we see it a lot with breweries. Lots of producers, they scale up and they go to these big automated systems, and it's just not the same. There's so much room for error, and it's just missing the soul. It's missing the craft.
So, right here, Jen. It's important who you let into your family. Can you talk a little bit about your hiring process?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. We have never placed an ad. We have never. It's always, hey, Ashley, do you know anyone who might be good? And we're going to need someone in about a month. Everyone, let's brainstorm. Let's really think about who we can envision in this role, who would be a good fit. And when we do that, we're really thinking about people that we know that live in our community, Lamoille County, Washington County, that truly love Vermont, want to stay in Vermont, but are just stuck in crappy jobs. So we've hired a lot of friends, lots of family, lots of friends of friends. We have brewers that used to make coffee for Keurig, We have very few employees that have college degrees. We have very few brewers that brewed before they brewed for us, because we really prefer to hire people we like, that are competent, that we want to be with and be around, and then we train them to do the job that we want them to do, and that works really well for us. We would never hire a young brewer out of a brew school who's coming to, learn all the secrets and then go start his or her new brewery. That's just not how we hire. And it works well for us. We really don't have turnover, very, very rarely, because again, it's people that love where we live, and they just want to live here and have a good job. Yes.
I got a mic for you.
You talked a little bit about survival mode, and I wanted, if it's not too personal, to ask you when it hit after you started to look around and raised your head and kind of realized you had shut down all your emotions.
Yeah, I don't know. Gosh, last week maybe. I don't know. It's hard. It's stressful when you have a lot of people depending on you and your business. You keep it together and you bury it. But with that said, I've had some really ugly moments where it all just comes out. Times where I think I can just tough it out and get through it. Probably my most embarrassing and most unprofessional scene of my life happened after the flood. It was probably 2 weeks after the flood because, got so much. I'm in control. We can do this. Turning lemons into lemonade, right? We're down the canning line. We got this new equipment just came in for our new beer, for that $100,000 that didn't belong to us. Got a lot going on, stressful. And liquor control comes in. And they ask for me. And I go over to the canning line. Excuse me. And the liquor inspector shakes my hand. And I think he's going to say, hey, sorry about your loss. What can we do to help you? And no, he hands me the Barry Times Argus, and he says, what is this? And I look at it, I said, what are you talking about? And he said, your husband gave the Times Argus an interview about the flood. And my husband said in the paper that he had gone into the building, he opened up the door to the basement, the water continued, the basement was flooded entirely, the brewery, the office, all of our food storage. So he went and he turned off all the gas controls, went over to the brewery. Now the water's coming up. It's almost at his knees. He hears the tanks bouncing in the basement, and he pours himself one last beer. Well, sure enough, liquor control comes in, and he takes me. I say, let's go talk outside. And we go out on the porch, and he said, you can't pour a beer for yourself. That's against the law. And we're going to take your liquor license away from you. You can't make beer anymore. Well, this creature just came out of me, and I just, it was the most incredible, terrible, unprofessional, embarrassing thing I have done in my whole life. I was spitting, I was pointing at him, I was cursing at him, and he left. And I immediately went upstairs and left a message for the commissioner and the governor apologizing for this scene. And the next day they called back and they apologized, and that was it. But I've had moments like that. I have other embarrassing moments. But that's what happens, right? When you bury it, it comes out in these really crazy ways. It manifests itself. It comes out sooner or later. For me, it's not pretty. I try to keep it bottled in. It's better for everyone. Yeah, Don.
Hey, Jen. I just want to ask you that you've alluded to, but I want to ask you to expand upon it more, and especially now with businesses doing more online marketing and selling things that way. One of the things, I live in Waterbury. I went to the brew pub the first day it was open. I went the second day it was open. I went the third day it was open. And I thought, maybe not every day. As the local principal of a school, I should be going into the pub every day. So I've been going there since. One of the things that was so attractive with your place was a sense of community, not only supporting the community, which you mentioned, but also supporting customers. And the employees that you put all that time into and benefited, you could just sense that was a family. And as a consumer there, that I went quite a bit, it was so valuable to have that feeling. And I'm concerned about where the world's going and how does the customer base, starting a new business, how do you keep those customers loyal to you? How do you offer experiences? Because so much in life now is online or viral and ordering online, and it just seems less connected. And I'm curious about, to new people coming up, new entrepreneurs, what's the customer issue and how do you keep them engaged, as you did in your brew pub?
Yeah, I think we really still focus on trying to make every person that walks through the door feel welcome, even though we get more tourists now. Just being welcoming to everyone. We really try to push everyone to do that. And I do think it's sad that we're moving to more automated services. I actually heard recently that there's a restaurant in Stowe who's really struggling to get service help. So they're going to be installing the iPads on their tables, like at Newark Airport. And I find that to be so sad. I also think here in the state of Vermont, we value social interaction. We value each other. We value family. We value craft. And I also think we're a state that really has a lot of potential. We get a lot of tourists. And I don't think we will ever lose that need for human interaction. And I think it's just a great asset that we have in this state. And I think we need to really focus on sharing, that asset, training young people, doing more training in schools and having them work and stressing the importance of human interaction. I think that's just what we really need to do. We need to focus on youth, and because they need it. You know, I see my 14-year-old son, all of his friends, they'll be sitting next to each other and they're texting each other, and it's just like, what are you doing? It's a sad state. But I do think things are going to change, and I know we value human interaction and we need it, and I'm optimistic, and all we can keep doing is focusing on what we do at the Alchemist, you know, trying to influence young people as much as we can and get them together in settings like this to talk. I don't know if I have the answer to that one. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I don't want to go to a restaurant and order on an iPad. I don't. That's gross. Yeah.
Not a lot of people. Hello and thank you. And not a lot. I haven't heard it tonight, but I also own a business with my husband, and I hear it nonstop. Oh, you're married. Oh, and you own a business, and oh, you must hate each other all day long, or something like that. How have you guys managed that and everything together?
I love working with my husband. He's an incredible business partner. It's not for everyone. I know that. I mean, I know married people that need to be away from each other. With that said, from the very beginning, and we had worked jobs together before, we have a pretty clear division of labor. Not so much now. Now we do a lot of stuff together. We sit right next to each other in an office. We do marketing together. We talk about, you know, human resources. We discuss everything. But early on, John made the beer and took care of the brewery, and I took care of everything upstairs, everything else. And it really worked well. You know, there are things John doesn't tell me that I don't need to be bothered about, and there's plenty of stuff I don't tell John about. I don't want to stress him out over financial stuff that he doesn't need to be concerned about. So, you know, we spend a lot of time outside of work talking about work, whether we're at the kitchen table or we're driving. Our whole life revolves around work, but we don't have to share everything either. You know, there's some things that I own and there are things that he owns, and that works really well for us. But you really have to like being together a lot, and it's not for everyone. And some people, like I work with all of my friends and some family, it works really well for us. That doesn't work for everyone either, you know, especially if you have crappy friends. Anyway. Yeah.
Staying on this theme, are you taking any steps to line up your son or the next generation for ownership and?
You know, I think it was always our dream that our son would be really interested in either making beer or being involved with the business. But right now he shows absolutely no interest at all. He wants to be an actor or I don't know, oceanographer or a cartoon writer. I don't know. He's got all sorts of ideas, and none of them having anything to do with beer. He's totally rejected it. So that definitely is a new one, because we always thought in the back of our mind, maybe someday, and that kind of brings us to our, what are we going to do in 10, 20 years? What will be our exit strategy? And I don't think we'll ever have a complete exit strategy, but I think if there are ways that we can do less and hand off more or become employee owned, then that will probably be the route that we go. But I don't know. Maybe he'll have a change of heart. Maybe he'll go to college and, like his mother, realize that he really likes beer, you know? I always love to tell people when I went to UVM, I didn't love being in the business school. I really didn't like being in school much. I don't like sitting in a classroom. Are you really bored right now? I'd be really bored listening to me. Oh God, when can we go get a beer? But I would skip my economics classes, and I would skip calculus classes, and I would go volunteer for the Peace and Justice Coalition on Church Street, because I would rather do that. You can't do that today. School's too expensive. You could just go work for the Peace and Justice Coalition, right? But I also ended up on double secret probation my freshman year for keg parties, because I loved entertaining and I loved having beer. So who knew where that would take me? Yeah, and Don knew when he came into the pub those first few days that he felt welcome and that it was a real beer drinking, happy kind of place. Yeah, I'd been honing that skill for a while. Yeah. Dwayne.
Thanks for doing this when you're not feeling great.
And Dwayne, thank you for helping us just install our solar canopy project. I think it's the first and biggest of its kind in the state of Vermont. Pretty cool. Thank you. Awesome.
Well, you are the first in so many ways. Tell us about your foundation.
So the Alchemist Foundation started as a fund 7 years ago. After the flood, we decided to start scholarships for kids that were affected by the flood. Randall Street, which was behind the pub, had a lot of middle-income homes. Lots of families were affected, lots of families that lost their homes, and there were several graduating seniors that year. So we decided, let's offer them some money for their first year of school. Not a lot, just enough to cover their books, maybe help with their rent, some food, and it kind of grew from there. Today, we have a full-time executive director. We work with a lot of different organizations. We provide, right now we award 15 scholarships a year to graduating seniors. So we have about 60 scholarship recipients at a time. And we're just working on career pathways for local youth. I started working on the State Workforce Development Board about 4 years ago. And I quickly realized that everyone was talking about college. Everyone's got to go to college. We got to get everyone, 70 by 25. And that's all great, that's fine. But even if we get to 70 by 25, what about the other 30%? And the fact of the matter is now, in a lot of communities, in Lamoille County, where our Stowe Brewery is, in some of the schools, only 60% of the kids go on to college. And of that 60%, half of them finish their first year. So we're really talking about 70% of the kids in some of these schools that aren't going to college. So let's not stop talking about college, but let's talk about other career pathways and opportunities. Let's talk about apprenticeships. Let's talk about credentialed programs. Let's talk about getting young girls into trades, getting young girls to truck drive. Getting young women to be plumbers and HVAC workers so they can make $20 an hour instead of $10 an hour. And that's what we're really focused on right now. It's exciting. We love it. And that's what keeps us going, right? It's not the beer. The beer, that's a part of our purpose. It's exciting, rewarding, fulfilling. And difficult also, It's a lot of work. Anyone want to talk about a challenging time you've had with your business startup? Anyone? Has anyone here been subject to this public scrutiny? They don't like what you're making. They don't like what you're doing. What you do is dumb. Has anyone experienced that? It gets you down, doesn't it? Does everyone say, rise above it, have thick skin?
Quick question for you. Yeah. So Vermont's getting to a point where we're getting saturated with craft breweries. It seems like there's another craft brewery popping up every other week, it seems like. How are you guys really focusing on diversification and helping that purpose stand out to people who want to drink beer? Yep. What makes you guys different in that sense?
We talk about this all the time. The market is saturated. It's really hard for new breweries today. There isn't a lot of shelf space available. There isn't tap space. I heard a commissioner of tourism or something talking a few weeks ago, one of the commissioners, and she said something like, we have a lot of breweries in the state of Vermont, but there's room for a lot more, because if you can't sell it here, you can always just ship it out of state. That's not true. It's just so not true, because breweries are popping up not all over Vermont, not all over the U.S., all over the world. I mean, they're in South Korea, and they're on the Gaza Strip. There's a brewery that's been revived by some young women. Their grandparents had owned it. So it's everywhere, right? And now people are really celebrating their local craft breweries, so people are traveling less for beer. So it's really a tough market. With that said, we're really positioned well, because we've only been in Vermont for so long, and we're very fortunate to have the cachet of Heady Topper. And we've really built a name for ourselves. It's taken 16 years of hard work, but we are able to send our beer out when we want to, but not all breweries are able to do that. In the past, when we've done a lot of donations and community work, we've always said, you know, we're not going to tout that. We're not going to use that to sell our beer. We don't need to. The beer sells itself. The quality of the beer will sell it. But the more time and the more money that we spend on these different initiatives, whether it's clean water or investing in our community, different nonprofits, I think now we are starting to use that as a marketing tool a little bit more because the market is so saturated. I like to think that if someone is deciding between two beers they like and they know that one is really treating their water well and respecting the environment and treating their female brewers equally, that they will choose that beer. I hope that, and I believe that, and I know we can do a better job sharing that information with people, and I think that's part of our plan for the coming years. Yeah.
You just mentioned shipping out of state and distribution. How are you guys growing, and what states are you actually shipping to now?
Yeah.
I heard a rumor that some penny toppers went for $20 a can in Manhattan at one point in time.
Yeah. So the only place we distribute all the time is Vermont, within about 30 miles of the brewery. We have a team of drivers, a few refrigerated trucks. We go as far north as Winooski, as far south as Barrie, and then we go to the Mad River Valley and then out to Morrisville. And this distribution circle, in addition to our retail shop in Stowe, is enough for us to sell all of our beer during our peak months. So that's the summer and then peak ski season. But then we have our shoulder seasons. So what do we do when it's slow? And we spend a lot of time talking about this, a lot of time thinking about it. Do we expand distribution? Do we go to Brattleboro? Well, we can't, because then in the summer we're really in a pickle. We don't have enough beer. So we have a few places where we regularly send beer during our off season. New York City, Philadelphia, occasionally Copenhagen, and a couple of times to LA. And there are very specific reasons why we do it, mostly population density. We can send it fresh and it'll sell quick. You know, we don't want to send our beer to New Hampshire and have it sit there and not be fresh. We don't do them throughout the whole off season. So our first quiet week where we have extra beer might go to New York, and then 2 weeks later we might send a little to Philadelphia, and then a couple weeks later to Copenhagen, and then we're in our busy season. So it's pretty quick like that. It kind of just goes and it's quick. Why Copenhagen, right? That's really far. We actually have a good friend who owns a brewery called McKellar. His name's Mikkel, and he does the most extraordinary job of getting our beer to Copenhagen and sold as fresh as possible. We can get our beer to Copenhagen and get it on the shelves quicker than we could get it to New Jersey. So we will literally can our beer on a Monday morning. It'll go on a refrigerated truck on a Tuesday. It'll be at Newark International the next day, air freighted to Copenhagen. It's in his bars by Friday night, so it's been canned 4 days earlier, and then it's out the next week. So we pick methods of moving it where we know it'll go really quick and be fresh, and that's really important to us.
Maybe one or two more.
Mm-hmm. See if I have any other stories I wanted to tell here. It's being videotaped. I should probably refrain from a couple of these. I had some really personal ones. Yeah. Do it.
I actually wanted to give a shout out to your community involvement. 2 years ago, I was, as part of Relay for Life, we formed a team in memory of my youngest brother, and I had a chance to be one of the Cancer Society's Heroes in Purple. And I wrote to Alchemists, and I was short of the fundraising goal I needed to get there. And I got this envelope back, and I opened it, and I was like, oh, great, another $50 towards my total. And then I looked again, and I started to cry, because it was a $500 check, and it made me a hero in purple that year.
Aww.
And that actually ended up being the last relay I did with my mom, because just a few months later, cancer stole her from us. So I just wanted to say thank you. You really are touching the world.
Thank you. That really means a lot. It's really touching. And honestly, hearing that is what motivates us to keep going and doing what we're doing. And I just want to say Chrissy's here tonight. She answers so many emails and writes so many checks for donations and follows up with people. And Chrissy doesn't handle it like it's a job. She really cares, and she writes letters back to people. Chrissy got a letter recently from a mom asking for a picture of one of the dogs that lives in our tasting room because their son has autism, and he really loved the dog. And so Chrissy wrote a nice card to her son with a picture of the dogs, and the boy wrote back, and he was so excited, and they've been pen pals. And then Chrissy got all of the staff at the Alchemist to write cards to this little boy. Gets me choked up thinking about it. And the mother recently reached out to Chrissy, just thanking her so much, how we've touched, Chrissy and everyone has touched this boy's life so much, and it's really made a difference in his life. I think Chrissy and this little boy are best friends, really. But, you know, I can't take credit for all of that. It's our workplace culture and our employees, they care so much. They really do, and they see the difference that we're making together. And I know, you know, they don't make a ton of money at the Alchemist. We all get by. We all have what we need. And I think it's that sense of purpose and that feeling of, you know, having positive impact on other people is what keeps us all going together. Is that right? Is that, no, Chrissy. Has it been an hour, really? Yeah, all right. Woo! Woo! All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming. Before you go, the series continues. On January 30th, we have the amazing Christine Dobson from Mamava, another incredible entrepreneurial story. I had the privilege of working with her at Jagged Apollo Kemp Design for 7 years. She's amazing. Please come. You know, I think you've all discovered what we've discovered here, that beer is actually the secret of innovation and collaboration. And I hope you'll come join us again and innovate and collaborate over beer again. So thank you so much, Jen. That was amazing.